Hey everybody. It's been a little while, but it's good to see everybody and or not see everybody or eventually hear from everybody. I just want to thank everybody for joining us in these Zoom chats. It's obviously, it's a lot of fun for us, and we hope it's a lot of fun for you. And we got another good one planned tonight. And we're going to continue these throughout the summer, and we hope you continue to give us good feedback. Leave us your email addresses in the chat so that we can reach out to you when we do these every few weeks or so, or whenever we can. Yeah, so thanks for the feedback from the last one. For those of you that are here for the first time, my name is Danish Nadim. I am a social studies teacher at Malvern High School, and I'm joined, as always, by the AP US History teacher, Brian China. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing well, Don. Thanks everyone for joining us. Again, for those of you who are with us the first time, if it's your first time here, thanks for joining us here. And like Don said, hopefully you guys will get a lot out of it. We had a lot of fun last time, and glad to be doing it again.
Yeah, we got a lot of good feedback, and we are going to implement some of that feedback today. Some more. We're going to have some more audience participation, and we're going to implement a lot of your feedback throughout the summer. So this is not our thing. This is like me and Brian. This is our thing. This is everybody's thing. So what the topic tonight, we call it party time. The topic tonight is about this two-party system that we've constructed for ourselves here in the United States. That's quite different than a lot of other places throughout the world. And, when you think about it, a lot of people do identify as Democratic or Republican. And what does that mean? Those two words are essentially just identity labels. And what does it really mean to be a Democrat? What does it mean to be a Republican? What does it mean to be an independent who sometimes votes for a Democrat for certain reasons or a Republican for certain reasons? So I want to kind of talk about that. I want to talk about that tonight. And one of the things that I think we'll address, Brian, is this whole idea of how party identity has changed throughout our history, right? It's, when we talk about the South, we think about the South today as a bunch of red states, and the Northeast being a bunch of blue states, California being a blue state. But that's not always the case. And that hasn't been the case throughout our history.
Yes and no. I mean, I think historically, and those of you guys who have taken AP US history with me, I love to talk about sectionalism. And you can't talk about sectionalism without tying it in with politics and political parties. So, the issues have changed, the events, the circumstances, the platforms have changed. But, if you go all the way back to the beginning, we've always had pretty much a two-party structure that has really kind of just moved as history's changed to where we are today. And I think it's interesting as we get ready for this, really probably, one of the most important elections of our lifetime, to kind of go back and look at some of this. And if you look there, those of you guys who took AP US history with me, hopefully you remember these terms. If you don't, lie to me and tell me you did. I'll try not to bore you guys too much with it. But, if you guys have questions or you want to know more, feel free to throw stuff in the comments. But if you go back to 1792, the very beginning, you see, what a lot of historians call the first two-party system. And it's really interesting if you look at it, because when our founding fathers drew up the Constitution, they didn't want to have political parties. They really envisioned this new government that they were creating to be one without political parties. They didn't want to see the divisiveness that you saw in England during that time. That coupled with the fact that everybody really loved George Washington, and everyone kind of knew that he was going to be their guy for president. So if you look at the Constitution, you'll see nothing about political parties. yet they've played such an important role in our history. And the first two there, the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. Very brief history. Federalists started by Alexander Hamilton, mostly in the North, and we'll talk about sectionalism a lot today. Big government, pro-business, mostly in urban areas, and again, mostly found their support in the North. Their arch enemies were the Democratic Republicans led by Jefferson, mostly in the South, advocated for small government, for states' rights, mostly farmers. And I think it's really interesting when you go back to the beginning, because one of the things we're going to look at today when we get to the 2020 election is this idea of urban versus rural voters, which even though we're 200 plus years later, it's still very much a thing. And I think we have some interesting maps to show you guys later that'll really highlight that. Just like political parties today have their platforms, political parties back then had their platforms as well. Obviously, times were different, issues were different. But if you look here at the 1796 election,
just a second, Brian. I just want to. So, what do you mean by sectionalism? Like, are you talking about the North votes a certain way and what the South votes a certain way? Is that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because early on, it was mostly North-South. But obviously, as our country's expanded, you do have different sections of the country with different regional interests, all voting the same way. Which obviously, when we see it reflected in our maps, our electoral maps, it really is divisive. Because you do have this North-South thing. You have your coastals versus, your inland. You have your urban versus rural. And that's one of the downfalls of being such a huge country. That you have all these different regions with different economies, with different geographies and different climates. And that all plays into, historically, what these political parties advocate for.
Okay, so when we're talking about sectionalism, we're talking about voting the same way that your region votes, typically.
Pretty much. I mean, again, we're going to make a lot of generalizations. Certainly doesn't mean that if you're an urban person, you're going to vote one way, or a rural person another way. But generally speaking, when candidates have to, plan and kind of decide where they're going to spend their money and spend their time, that's important information to them to know of what areas are kind of, favorable to them, and what are some areas that they could try to make inroads to, maybe try to steal from their opponent.
Okay.
If you were with us last time, we called those swing states.
Right.
So swing states definitely plays in here with sectionalism. If you look at Florida, Florida is a southern state, obviously, but you have a lot of people from New England. A lot of New Yorkers go down, when they retire or otherwise, down to Florida. Florida is kind of a changing state. We'll spend some time looking at that later.
Okay, great.
Let's jump into some of these maps here. Again, I'll try not to speak too long, but if those of you guys who took the course and know anything about U.S. history, John Adams for the Federalists, Jefferson for the Democratic Republicans, issues during this time, whether or not we should have a national bank, whether or not we should have tariffs, whether or not, should we have greater state authority or greater federal authority? Obviously, a lot of those have changed, but that idea of big federal government versus states' rights is still really, really big today. And if you've been following the news, you've seen that. And obviously, you see the Northerners, some of your coastal areas down south went for Adams, your pro-business people. And then in your south, and somewhat in the western parts of states like North Carolina and Virginia, they went for Jefferson and Democratic Republicans. You want to keep going? Here's then we'll jump ahead a few years. Now, obviously, this is a little further. Political parties change. The Federalists are going to die out. They'll be replaced by the Whigs eventually, led by Don, one of my favorite people, Henry Clay. They'll eventually die out. And really, in 1854, you see the birth of the Republican Party. And if you take a look at this map here, guys, the Republican Party, it's the same Republican Party today. The Republican Party in 1854, their main platform, and some little ones as well, but they did not want slavery going out west. And obviously, if we're looking at the first half of the 19th century, that is the issue that everybody was talking about. So right now, obviously, we're looking at things like COVID and things like, some of the racial injustice. Back then, they were discussing slavery. So we have a complete political party here that sole purpose was to try to prevent slavery from going out west. And
That was the reason for the birth of the Republican Party, right?
yeah,
The abolition, or the to stop slavery from spreading to the new states that would eventually be part of the Union.
well, Republicans wouldn't call themselves abolitionists because they always reminded the South that we're not looking to end slavery.
Right.
But they kind of knew deep down that if slavery didn't go west, and Democrats and if Southerners lost the Senate, everyone saw the writing on the wall. So it's a little disingenuous of the Republicans to say, hey, we're not abolitionists. But deep down, everybody knew if slavery didn't expand, it would die out.
So 1860, we have a Republican win the presidency, Abraham Lincoln. We have the South voting Democrat for the most part, right? So those are those two parties. Do we have the yellow? What's the yellow? Is the yellow visible? It's not visible on my screen.
There was a constitutional party. It was kind of like a random third party. They ran a man named John Bell.
Right.
And actually, you see those light blue, and this is what we talked about last time with some of the electoral votes. Those were actually Stephen Douglas and my APUSH friends. Hopefully, you guys remember that the Democrats split here. And even though Stephen Douglas came in fourth in terms of electoral votes, he actually came in second in terms of popular votes, which is kind of an interesting election there.
Interesting. That is interesting. So Lincoln wins this election basically, but most of the country, it looks like, is not voting for him. Most of these states had not voted for him. It's just that his opposition had fractured.
Well, Lincoln is fortunate. He obviously carries every northern state. He only gets 39% of the popular vote, which is kind of amazing when you think of the fact that more than 60% of the people voted for somebody other than the winner.
Forget about the winner. We're talking about Abraham Lincoln here. This is. I feel like this might be lost in history a lot of times, that he didn't win. It was not an overwhelming victory in an election in 1860 for him.
No, it wasn't. Even in 64, it was closer than most people even realize. History's kind of made him as great as he is, rightfully so. But if you look at history, again, it's not the purpose of this conversation, but if you want to look at the Civil War, it makes sense why a lot of those southern states secede, because a large majority of the country did not vote for him or want him. Right. But, I think for our purpose here, it's interesting to look at the sectionalism. You see there, you've got your northern interest, you've got your southern interest, and then you have some of those swing states there who are kind of caught literally in the middle of this space. Interesting. All right. Yeah, 1900, quick one here. Republicans run William McKinley. He is pro-business. He's a laissez-faire guy, wants to kind of let those people like Rockefeller and Carnegie keep taking advantage of the workers, of the lower classes. William Jennings Bryan, who's a former populist, he runs for the Democrats here, pushes greater regulation, ends up losing the election. But you see here again that north-south split there. So again, it's interesting because so many people ask, and I'm sure you hear it too from friends and students, is this the most partisan time in history? And it certainly seems it. I mean, how can a pandemic become political, even though it obviously has? But if you look at history, it probably isn't. This has all happened before.
Yeah. I think that's something as history teachers that we say a lot to a lot of people, because I think the media does say, "Oh my God, this is a historic election," or "This is a historic moment," and as history teachers, we'd be like, "No, this happened like 5 times already over the last 100 years." I just want to clarify on this map: the blue are the Republicans, and the red are the Democrats. I know. Now we associate kind of the reverse, but the North, it looks like in 1900 is very Republican, and the South is very Democrat in this case.
Yeah. Let's keep walking through here. I think we have 1952 next. Don, you want to talk about this one? I know you love to talk about this with the South and their transition.
it's just this one really jumped out to me because this is Dwight Eisenhower being elected, the hero of World War II, in 1952, running for president. And my American history is not as good as yours, but I'm pretty sure Eisenhower could have ran as a Democrat also. He wasn't ideological in any way. He ran under the Republican Party. And this map is amazing to me in that the South, the Deep South, voted against Eisenhower. The rest of the country votes, even Florida. We talked about Florida as sort of a, not a Deep South. Always looks like in 1952 it didn't vote with the Deep South, but it's so interesting to me that Eisenhower, this war hero, not super ideological, loses in the old Confederacy. And, that just jumped out as sectionalism to me, as a good example of that.
Yeah, again, hopefully there's some APA shoot in Savannah, whoever else is on. Hannah, I think it's for you. Hopefully you guys are remembering the Solid South. And, really for nearly a century after the Civil War, the South goes Democrat. They are Democrat, through thick and thin. And really 1952 is when things start to change, as we start to see the civil rights era, and we start to see Republicans really take kind of this small government stance. And it's really Republicans and kind of conservatives who advocate, hey, it should be, the issue of civil rights should be left up to the states, which obviously is something that's going to be pretty popular in the South. And if we bring up our next map here, now obviously it's going to be 48 years later. Don't you want to talk about 2000?
I'd rather not.
Until you wanted to. I'll take it.
I mean, I could tell you all about it, but I think you'll give a better viewpoint on that.
Well, it's interesting. Now you see the South is Republican. Yeah. And again, those of you guys who know U.S. history, there's something in the DNA of Southerners that they've always been for states' rights. So, early on they were Democratic Republicans. This is one of those things where the party lines cross, because the evolution of the Republican Party goes back to those Federalists, but they've changed over the years. The issues have changed. So in the beginning, they were states' rights with the Democratic Republicans and the Jeffersonians. Here in 2000, you see that the South is pretty heavy Republican, who by this point, Republicans have taken on that states' rights, smaller government kind of ideas.
And they've expanded the South in 2000. Ohio has become this like dependable Republican state. Indiana, West Virginia, which was just a Democratic state through and through, considered a northern state for a very long time, voted for George Bush in this election. Again, Florida, for those of you too young to remember this, Florida did vote for George Bush but only by 537 votes, and that's where the election was decided. So this map really gives us, I think this sets up the era that we're currently in, right, Brian?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, again, Florida proves the ultimate swing state. If you were with us last time, this is the fourth time in history that you have a candidate actually win the popular vote. Al Gore won the popular vote here. But since he lost Florida by such a small margin, and it's a winner-take-all system, George Bush got all of Florida's electoral votes, and that gave him the election.
Yeah.
And I think if we look at our next map here, I think this is an interesting one, and I think it's one that I hope, for their sake, both candidates are looking at here. This is 2012, and if you don't remember, Barack Obama won this election, defeated Mitt Romney. You obviously see the sectional interest here. Obama took the Northeast, still the South, pretty Republican. And again, if you look at that map, you probably see more red than you do blue. But again, when you look at the electoral numbers there, you see states like North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota with just 3 electoral votes. So geographically, Republicans taking those more rural areas. And that's really where we're at today, where your cities, your urban areas are lean left, they're more Democratic, and your more rural areas are more conservative. They lean right. And if you just look at Florida and Pennsylvania, and Don, I don't know if you'll find this interesting, but obviously Obama won them both. But if we go to our next map here, if you look at those states by county, look at Florida.
Wow.
Most of Florida is red, which means that most counties in Florida voted for Mitt Romney. But you look at the Orlando area, the Tampa area, Broward County, the Miami-Dade area, those areas with so many people, such urban areas in those big cities, so many people in those cities voted for Barack Obama that even though Obama lost most of the counties, the rural counties, he still carried that state. And if you jump up to Pennsylvania, if you know where it is here, you can kind of see it's almost like a rectangle. 67 counties there. Obama won just 12, yet still carried that state. And I think it's something that the Biden campaign really has to look at. And I think it maybe makes it easier for the Biden campaign because they can hit areas like Pittsburgh, they can hit Philadelphia hard.
Right.
They don't have to win Western Pennsylvania.
That's what political scientists say about Pennsylvania, right? It's Philadelphia on one side, Pittsburgh on the other side, and Tennessee in the middle.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Which again, we talked about it last time. It's so absurd that it's a winner take all. But yeah, Pennsylvania, Florida, two interesting states. We'll see what happens with them going forward.
Very interesting. So Florida, it looks like Obama won it twice. He did win it by less of a margin the second time. So, we're going to get into a little bit later on what the Trump campaign should be doing. And I think you're absolutely right. 2012 is definitely the map that the Trump campaign should be looking at because it's a re-election map. And it was a re-election map for Obama in which he was successful. We're going to play a little game right now. With with our wonderful participants. It's a game. It's called Name That President, and so I'm going to go through a few of the policies enacted by a president, and I'm going to ask that those of you in the chat not Google any of these things. There's no point to that. And try to give your best guess. And Brian doesn't know these either. So he's, AP US history, he's the expert. Let's see how you do compared to him. And I really tried my hardest to make this difficult. Those of you that have taken my class know that I try my hardest to make things difficult. Okay, all right, so let's get started. Okay, this president banned the use in the sale of semi-automatic rifles. He proposed new taxes of about $140 billion. He passed a new Clean Air Act. And also he passed a new Civil Rights Act, which made it easier for you to sue your employer for discrimination. Let's see if we can get some more guesses in the chat right now. Zen, our wonderful producer, is monitoring the guesses. And let's see, we have a few guesses. And we've got, I think we have, no, that one's wrong. That's wrong. Yeah, that's wrong. What's wrong? It's this one. Oh, these are the guesses. He wants me to read the guesses. Okay, we have people guessing Reagan. Dr. Cressy is guessing Nixon. Asha is guessing Jorge Bush. You're going to have to be more specific with your guesses if the presidents have the same names. And Greg Padden is guessing Ulysses S. Grant. I think that's a good guess. Greg, if they had semi-automatic rifles back in in the 1860s, I think the war would have been very different. Asha says George Bush, the younger one. Omer says a Democrat. He doesn't know who. Okay, so Brian, you know this one, right? This is the one you know.
Well, I hope I know more than one, but yeah. Do you want me to say who it is?
Yeah. So who is it? Who is it?
This is going to be Bush 41, the older Bush. So I thought you had it, Asha. Yeah. You were close.
No, she said Bush the younger one after when I asked her to be more specific. So Asha's the winner on this one. Oh no, she said the younger one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
He's not young. He's old, and dead. But
he was young at heart. But yeah, he's not gonna be it there.
You know, he was young. He jumped out of an airplane, right, every day on every birthday for a long time. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, very close, Asha. That was good. Nice job, Mr. China. Okay. All right. So this next president is Southern. He's a Southern president. He passed a crime bill that put 100,000 new police officers on the street. He cut taxes by expanding what's known as the Earned Income Tax Credit. And he added a work requirement for welfare, meaning you had to work. Many people on welfare had to either look for jobs or work. And in one of his speeches, he said that he would end welfare as we know it. So we've got some guesses out there. We've got Greg Padden saying Bill Clinton, Dr. Cressy, Bill Clinton, Amanda, Donna, Bill Clinton, Omer, Bill Clinton. So looks like they all think it's Bill Clinton. Savannah was gonna say Bill Clinton, but she's a little late. The consensus, do you agree with the consensus, Mr. China?
Yeah, this is definitely Bill Clinton. Okay. I mean, we're old enough to remember it when it happened.
Yeah. The thing with these, and the reason why I picked these is, are these what we think a Democrat would do today, or what a Democrat did?
No, you wouldn't. Right. And I love this time period because this is one of the rare times, especially in our lifetimes, where you see Democrats and Republicans work together. And Clinton and Newt Gingrich, who did not see eye to eye politically often, but they did work to get some bipartisan legislation and reforms through. Historically, some have been better than others, obviously, but I think that's something that's really lacking now. If you ask Republicans, it's Barack Obama's fault that it's going to rain tomorrow. So unfortunately, you're in this time period now where we don't see what we saw in the late 90s there, where Republicans and Democrats can compromise.
I was waiting to see how long in these sessions it would take you to mention Newt Gingrich. And, an hour and a half is about right.
Yeah, you gave me that one. You knew I was going to do it. I feel like I was set up a little bit.
All right, let's go for this next one. This president added more oil and gas drilling on the East Coast of the United States. He implemented veterans education reform, which, there's a little typo there. He made it free or reduced tuition for those who served in our wars. And then finally, he froze the assets of Iran in the United States during his presidency. So we've got some guesses here. So we've got Dr. Cressy saying Barack Obama, Savannah saying Jimmy Carter, Asha saying Jimmy Carter, Greg, Jimmy Carter, and then somebody, I don't know who it is, saying Ronald Reagan. So I thought this was an interesting one. Mr. China, do you have a guess or an assessment of people's guesses?
Yeah, I think they're good. Looking at it, I originally I thought maybe Obama, but then he unfroze those assets. So I would have to probably say I'd be on Team Carter, but this one I'm not so sure about.
Yeah. So this is Barack Obama. Now, yes, he did unfreeze those assets as part of the Iran deal. So you are right about that. So maybe that threw you off a little. And this I thought was interesting because this was when we truly became the top producer of crude oil in the world during the Obama presidency. And he had the Deepwater Horizon incident, and there was a lot of stuff about Anwar and drilling in Alaska. But under the Obama presidency is when we saw the most gas and oil drilling. And I don't know if Obama ever felt it from the left politically, as much from the environmentalists as he probably should have.
He got it pretty hard. I mean,
yeah.
The interesting thing with Obama and Barack Obama ran, he wouldn't be left enough, I think, for this Democratic Party, which obviously is.
I think I agree.
Just like I think if Ronald Reagan ran today, I don't think he'd be right enough.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Yeah. All right, let's go to the next one. This is our last one. We did this one? Okay, it's all right. All right, here we go. I love this one. This is my favorite one. This president wanted to end segregation. So I'll give you a little time period idea. He withdrew and essentially ended a major war in a war zone. He adopted Keynesian economics. So he essentially said that government spending, the more government spent, the more possibility the US would have to come out of recession. So he would spend money to break us out of recessions. He was a Keynesian economist, I guess. He added $5 billion to benefits to the old, to the aged, to blind, to the disabled. And he increased the Social Security taxes to pay for that, right? The taxes that come out of our paycheck. He also passed possibly one of the best environmental pieces of legislature ever, the Clean Air Act, the original Clean Air Act. So do we have any guesses? I've got, so I don't know the timestamp on these. Okay, so Nixon, Savannah says Nixon. Amanda says LBJ. That's a good one. Dr. Cressy's asking, did they have 5 billion in 1930? Nixon, he says, and this anonymous person on their iPhone is also saying Nixon. I don't know who that person is. Brian, what do you think? Who do you think this is?
I'm going to say Richard Nixon as well. And
yeah, Rich, I love this one. Richard Nixon, and we're going to get into a little bit about what Biden and Trump need to do to get to win this election. I think Nixon is the model for somebody like Trump. I think he has so much credibility on the right that he goes and adds Social Security taxes to your paycheck or passes a Clean Air Act, and Republicans can't say anything to him. And he says, I'm going to increase government spending. I'm going to end segregation. They can't do anything. He's a role model for the Republican who wants to govern in the center.
Yeah, I thought we were going to see that with Trump, and we really haven't. I thought we'd see an infrastructure bill from Trump that he would have been able to get through. He had enough credit to do that. I agree with you, but we haven't seen him in term one. Will we get to term two? Who knows? That'll be interesting to see if that happens. But
term two, a Trump term two. Okay, so let's go to present day. Let's see what both of these people. So we're set up for Biden versus Trump, and over the next few weeks, over the next few months. So we're about 4 months away from Election Day. It's going to feel, just to let everybody know, it's going to feel like an eternity. But what do these candidates need to do from now until Election Day to win this election? I think it's going to be a close election. So let's take a look at what they need. Yeah, let's take a look at the polling to see where the election is at today. remember, so polls are a snapshot of where we are today. If the election were to be held today, they are not a forecast of what's going to happen in November. And we need to make sure we understand that, because we have a lot of time. We have 4 months. So in April, a few months ago, we saw Biden ahead by about 5 points in this CNBC poll. And then current day, so in June, I believe this poll was taken at the beginning of June, we see Biden has expanded his lead to a 9. Some polls have him even higher, so a 9-point lead. So Biden's lead is currently growing at this moment. If the election were to be held today in a national election, which we don't have national elections, right? But in a national election, Biden would win by 9 points, according to this poll of 800 registered voters nationwide.
And Don, let me jump, if I could jump in, Don, because I'm going to tell you that I think it means nothing.
Right.
And actually looking, a Monmouth poll today has Biden plus 12. And I think it means absolutely nothing, because if we go to our next set of polling data here, you got to go to the battleground states. It's going to come down to a few states, and I find it amazing because Trump is obviously taking a lot of hits with the COVID thing. I mean, obviously some people approve of what he's doing, but if you look at the polling across the country, most people have not been thrilled with his response. Obviously, we've had a lot of racial unrest, which a lot of people have not given Trump high marks on. But if you look at the polling, it really hasn't hurt him that much, which really is amazing. And this is an historic candidate in the fact that, his supporters love him. And it doesn't really change the polls. And if you look here outside of Florida, which in this poll has Biden plus 7, Trump is really within the margin of error in almost all of them. And then there's what I call the Trump margin of error. Because we saw this in 2016. We saw all these polls saying Hillary Clinton was going to win all these states. And there's a few we're missing here. Georgia, and Pennsylvania's there. Even Texas we have to throw in, I think, at this point. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And all the polls were wrong because, I guess people were polled. Maybe they didn't want to say they were voting for Trump, but they came out and voted for him. Or
we're going to do
people who were polled who said, I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton, just didn't show up to the polls. So this is extremely close. And I agree with you. I think it's going to be a really, really close race. If it was today, we have 4 months. Anything can happen.
And a lot of stuff will happen. I mean, that's definitely – Zan, if we could just go back to that poll before. We're going to do a whole episode on polling, right? That's been the feedback, and everybody knows that the polls were wrong. And one of the things that I want to just look at with these two polls is the poll I showed you before is a national poll, and it's a poll of registered voters. This is a poll of likely voters. Those are two different things. So the pollsters have a formula to determine whether you're a likely voter. Joining a Zoom on Thursday night at 8 o'clock to talk about politics would most likely make you a likely voter. And they take things like that into calculation. Your socioeconomic status, how many jobs you work, definitely puts you in a likely voter or an unlikely voter. And that's why we see the margins shrink here. He's down by 9 nationally, but he's only down by 2 and 3 in Pennsylvania, and the margin of error is 2. So you're absolutely right, Brian. That other poll means nothing, and these are the polls that mean everything. So we got to look at polls very closely, and we got to make sure we understand what we're looking at. And I think. Yeah.
No, I just Dr. Cressy asked a really good question, and it's funny because we actually cut it out last night. We did have polls tracking Trump versus Hillary 2016 versus Trump versus Biden today, and interestingly enough, there was I don't want to say a larger gap, but a considerable difference in the fact that Trump is trailing Biden more now than he was trailing Hillary at the same part in time. So those polls would, if you look at those, that data, it would say that Trump's in a little bit of trouble.
Right.
So I don't know
You
if
know, it's interesting. I think I was thinking about this with the polls being so low, so bad for Trump, and everybody's saying, well, where was he at this point in 2016? And yes, that's great. That, you know, for Trump supporters and for Trump himself, that he came back. But if you know, if in Game 6 of the World Series I'm down by 3 runs and I score 4 and I end up winning that game in the 9th inning, and then it comes to Game 7 and I'm down 3 runs again in the 9th inning, that's not a good situation to be in. You know, yes, I've done it before, so I know I can do it. And the Trump administration and the Trump campaign should be thinking that way, but it's not a position of an advantage.
it's not ideal, but Don, let me jump in there. If you told me that we were going to have 13% unemployment, a national pandemic, and you know, a major social issue going on, of which the president has not received favorable marks, and I said that Trump is going to be in striking distance in all these states, you would sign up for that right now.
If I was the Trump campaign, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
again, if you look at what's going on right now, the fact that he's competitive in all these states.
And I think the next graphic tells us why he's so competitive.
Yeah.
Right? I think this tells us exactly why he's so competitive. If you take a look at this CNBC poll, this is 800 registered voters just about a week ago, towards the end of June. And they polled Biden versus Trump. Who do you trust better to handle things like racial equality, healthcare, dealing with COVID, police reform, foreign policy, dealing with China, immigration? What's that last one? The economy, right? So the whole thing is Biden is beating him on every single aspect except for the economy.
Yeah.
And more Americans trust Trump to lead this recovery or to pull us out of whatever this is right now. You know, and that's why I think he's still so close in the polls.
Absolutely. I mean, people will vote with their wallets. I mean, that's just historically always been true. Again, go back to that 1796. Northerners voted for Adams because you know, he was going to protect them and the businesses and the bank, and you know, the farmers voted for Jefferson because he was going to look out for them. People will always vote with their wallet, and I mean, this chart says it all. I mean, he's +6 with 13% unemployment, with the stock market, you know, overperforming what people would expect it to be. But a lot of people have lost a lot of money in the stock market, and people still trust Trump in the economy. That's huge, and that's something that the Biden team is going to have to address if they want to, you know, pick up some votes.
And if you're the Trump team, that's where you want to focus. I think that's where your money is. I think you double down on that. I don't think Trump is changing his tune on any of those other things. Foreign policy, police reform, racial equity, you know, healthcare, and we'll talk about some of the things that both of these campaigns need to do to win this election. So let's see what each of these candidates needs to do to win in November. We're going to take a look at this. I guess we did a top. This is sort of our top 3, and you know, one of the things that I have as advice for Biden. I guess what are we doing here? Oh, I'm sorry, Brian. Go ahead. What do you think Biden? I'm sorry. What do you think Biden is going to do? Going to need to do to win this election? What are the top 3 things you would tell him?
He's got to try to get people excited about him. You know, Trump supporters are excited to go vote for him. They can't wait. You see Trump-Pence flags everywhere. You see signs. You see it on social media. Trump's people are excited and ready to go. I don't know anyone, and this is sad. And yeah, Biden's older. You know, maybe he's lost it. Maybe he's not the same Joe Biden he once was. Maybe a 2016 Biden has a different experience, but there's not a lot of enthusiasm for this candidate. A lot of people say, wow, can't believe this is the best the Democratic Party has. Now, to his defense, he's been locked in a basement for the last 4 or 5 months with the pandemic. But he's going to have to find some way, and I don't know how he does it if he's they're not going to have these big rallies. I don't know how excited people can get from hearing them give a speech on, on an interview on TV or from his basement.
Yeah.
But I think it comes down to voter turnout. Again, all
Yeah.
those polls are assuming that the people you're asking are going to go out and vote. And the Trump people are going to go vote. They're going to be there. So Biden and the Democratic Party have to figure out some sort of way to get those people excited. And, listen, are people going to go? Some people, you have kids at home, you have stuff going on, you have life. Are you going to go that day and leave work or go at night and wait in line in some places for hours to go vote for Joe Biden? I think it's something that hurt Hillary Clinton. People weren't excited and they didn't show up. I think Biden is very much in danger of having the same thing happen.
I think that goes to my top point also for Biden, is to get his surrogates out. Biden, Biden is who he is, and we'll talk about him a little bit more in a second. But his surrogates, whoever he picks as the vice president, I think is going to be very important for that voter turnout. Barack and Michelle Obama are going to be very important for that voter turnout. Bernie Sanders, I think, is going to be very important. So he's going to have to get the Democratic Party out there and do a lot of his work for him. And I think that was something, when I look back at 2016, Hillary didn't do as well. I think she towards the end, she realized she needed to do it, but I don't think she did that as well in 2016.
And I'm going to jump to my third one here, because I think Biden can do it. Hillary Clinton was seen as kind of emotionless and kind of this, almost like this, not even like a person, almost just like this robot.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, listen, he has experienced loss, he's experienced tragedy, and Joe Biden is at his best when he shows compassion and leadership. And I think he's got a real opportunity here. I mean, this country is we are down for the count here, between everything going on socially, between the economy, between this virus. And I think that if you can get a few moments there, and I don't know if we have the video queued up, but the Biden team has really put out some great videos of authentic moments of Joe Biden just interacting with people. And that's Biden's strength, that he genuinely seems like a decent human being. And, even a lot of Trump people would say, hey, you know what? I don't love Trump as a person, but I like his policies. But
I think you're right.
Trump, Biden's got the shot to get out there and I think maybe increase some of that enthusiasm by having those moments on the trail. Right. Will COVID rob him of that? I don't know. I mean, this is Joe Biden, who, when he was in the primaries, would say hours after and try to shake as many hands as he could. You know, people taking selfies and really just talking to him. That's his strength.
That's his strength. The Biden video that we were going to show, but Zoom has technical difficulties, is of him in a classroom, and there's a young boy, and he, pins an American flag on him, and he doesn't know who Joe Biden is. And Joe tries to explain to the boy who he is. He's like, Barack Obama? Like, I worked with him. And it's just such a genuinely good moment that takes out any sort of politics and just shows this human connection. And I think that's where he needs to focus on. I think we're going to go a little quick through Biden. Do you have any other piece of advice for Biden you'd like to give, Brian?
Yeah, I think he's got to have a great legal team ready. And I read yesterday that he's got about 600 lawyers and people throughout the country. I mean, listen, these swing states are going to be close. We're talking about mail-in ballots now, which it's really a new wrinkle in all of this. I think you look at some of this polling in these battleground states, I think you could have some real contested states, plural. Right. And those of you guys who are old enough to remember 2000, we didn't find out for over a month after that election who actually won it. So I think Biden better have a good legal team ready, and they better be ready to go on election night.
All right. So Biden will have a good legal team ready. I think Trump will have a good legal team ready. Definitely. That's sort of his strategy. So let's talk about what the president needs to do to get reelected. And when I thought about this question, I thought about 2016 and the commercial that I saw at the end of the election. the last week into the election was, I think, one of the best political commercials that I've ever seen. And it was by the Trump campaign. And it was a voiceover of Donald Trump saying how for years and years, politicians have promised you all of this stuff. They have not delivered. And I'm going to go to Washington for you. I don't need to go, right? I'm a billionaire, blah, 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 whatever. He didn't say that, but it was implied that I don't need to do this, but I'm going to go fight for you in Washington. And that's sort of my advice to him. Make America 2016 again, right? Let's try to make it like 2016, where enough people believed you, right? Enough people need to believe you that you are going to drain the swamp. And he can be convincing with that argument. It's possible. The problem is all of the other things that he's doing. You know, he needs to get a new message. I would suggest he gets a new speechwriter. And he can't continue to incite culture wars, because he has a chance to win this election, even with all of the culture wars that he's trying to start. If he doesn't incite those culture wars, he can still win this election. If he doesn't go after Black Lives Matter, if he doesn't go after Rosie O'Donnell, I don't know, the people he attacks on Twitter, if he just doesn't do that, he can win this election.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with you there. I think that's who Trump is. I think by this point, either you love him for it or you hate him for it. And I don't think him changing down the stretch here, I agree with you. I don't think he's going to lose any of his supporters with it, but I really don't think he's going to gain many. I agree with you that he needs a vision. You know, he had those slogans. He had, Make America Great Again, of course, and building the wall and all those catchphrases. I think he does need to talk about what's next. And I think it could really work out well for him in terms of timing. The economy is starting to pick up. Jobs obviously are coming back in some level. Now we'll see what happens with all these, the kind of the second wave or the continuation of the first wave of COVID. But this economy can bounce back, and it's growing by November, and Trump can take credit for that and say, hey, listen, I grew it once, I'll grow it again.
Yeah.
And at the same point, attacking Biden is saying, hey, this guy can't do it. I think that's his route.
Absolutely.
I don't think the culture wars, I think people have already made up their mind on him.
But I'm saying that if he doesn't do any more damage to his campaign, and if they kind of own the economy, maybe pass another stimulus, throw some money at people, make the economy come back. If people feel that the economy is trending upwards, they are more likely to re-elect an incumbent.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And again, my eyes are going to be on the debates, because that's where Trump really shines, and that's where Biden has struggled. He has some of these great authentic moments, but they're moments. I don't know if Biden can go 2.5 hours with Trump on a debate. I think that's going to be a real problem for Biden. And I think if Trump comes prepared and Trump is quick, he's a strong speaker, and no matter what he says, he's compelling in it. So I think that Biden really just has to survive the debates. I think that's going to be a real opportunity for Trump to shine. And I think he will, and that's going to be primetime TV. Everyone's going to be watching.
Absolutely. We're all going to be watching. All right. So I think this was a good discussion. I want to thank everybody for being here. We're going to move to the questions. We're going to take a few questions. But what I would ask everybody to do, because we are trying to build a little bit of a community here, please leave us your emails in the chat. And you can email us at donandchina@gmail.com. Right? That's what we're going with.
We had a Gmail account.
Yeah, we have a Gmail account. Zen is telling me this right now. So we have a Gmail account, donandchina@gmail.com. Email us your feedback. Email us your ideas, ideas for games or ideas for topics, whatever you want. But definitely leave us your email in the chat. please do that. Everybody that's in there, it's Don, D-O-N, to my wife. Yeah, definitely leave us your email. That's the best way we're going to get in touch with you. We'll tell you when the next one is, what the next topic is. And one of the things we saw in feedback was people want to have questions beforehand, knowing what the topic is. This is the way to do it. So please leave us your email. Are we gonna take some questions? We're gonna take some questions. Are you okay with that, Brian? We have a few minutes to take some questions. Okay. A person with a doctorate in genetics is asking, do you think the current Republican Party is going through an ideological change now? Is the Republican Party, I'm going to definitely give this one to you, is the Republican Party going through an ideological change right now?
I don't know. I have no clue. I think the Democrats are. I mean, I think the Democrats are clearly moving left. My personal opinion is I think Republicans kind of sold any ideology they had to get the White House in 2016. I don't think Trump really shares a lot of the traditional Republican beliefs of the last 70 years.
I think he does. I think he believes in deregulation.
Okay, you might believe in deregulation. That's fair. I'm not saying he doesn't have any, but if you think of a typical Republican, I do not think you think of Donald Trump when you look at things like family values. And I mean, half these things that Trump says, I don't even know if he believes. It worked for the Republicans in 2016. They took advantage of people's dislike for, politicians and the Washington elite. I don't know where the party goes. Does Pence pick up this mantle after? I don't know. It's a great question. I have zero clue what the answer is. What do you think?
It's a good question. I don't know what the ideology is of the Republican Party. I hope somebody can tell me. I think deregulation. I think maybe states' rights. I don't know.
I mean, I
small government.
Small government.
Yeah, small government. So here's one, and I think we just have time for maybe one more. This might be. So we went from 1952 to 2000 rather quickly, and the parties completely switched. Why did that happen, Mr. China? Why did that happen?
Well, I mean, a lot of it, again, there's a lot of reasons there. I'll start with civil rights, which I think is the greatest common denominator. As I mentioned before, the South, solid South after the Civil War, blame Republicans for ending slavery in the Civil War. But then what happens when you get into the late 40s with Truman, into the 50s and 60s with Kennedy and LBJ, Democrats start pushing for civil rights. And obviously we don't have all the electoral maps there. But those Southern whites who were looking to kind of hold on to power there, they now see the Democratic Party that they've had since the Civil War. They now have to abandon that party, as that's now the party that's pushing for federal civil rights legislation. They go third party. We talked about it yesterday when we were talking. They run segregationist candidates, and they actually win Southern states, but not enough to carry an election. And almost by default, they come over to the Republican Party, which is the states' rights party, or which I should say emerges from this as a states' rights party. Which
Republicans saw this as an opportunity, right, to get these white working class voters on their side.
Yeah, I mean, you're making it sound a little more opportunistic than I think I might have been.
I think Reagan in 19, he ran for president in the 70s, and then in 80, saw it as a Big Ten party. He saw how he could bring working class white voters into the Republican Party, and they did it very well in 1980 and 84, and then throughout the rest of the time.
Yeah, I mean, again, I may not be as cryptic as you are. I mean, listen, Southerners have always been states' rights people, and the parties change. Republicans are small government. Even if you go back to Barack Obama, I mean, that was their thing. They hated Obamacare; it was unconstitutional. Fiscal responsibility. Paul Ryan. I think the party, and going back to Dr. Cressy's question, I think the party's moved away from that.
Yeah.
Some through necessity and circumstance, some through a candidate that I don't really think is a Republican. That's just my opinion. That's a simple way to look at it, though.
I see that. I think we could do a whole other episode on that. All right, last question for the night. quick. What role do you think that the Supreme Court seats are going to play in this next election? Ruth Bader Ginsburg, cancer survivor multiple times. I'm not sure how old she is. She's in her 80s, right? What role is this going to play in the next election?
Everyone talks about every election cycle. I don't think it will play much at all. I don't think I've ever met anyone who said, I'm going to vote for this candidate because of the Supreme Court.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Well, what do you think?
I have met candidates who've said that. They've mostly been right-wing candidates. But yeah, you're right. I don't think people go to the polls saying, "Oh, I'm going to make sure that Merrick Garland doesn't get on the Supreme Court." I think you're absolutely right. And we could talk about the courts in another episode. All right, one last question that I'm going to take this one myself. So if Biden had a slogan on a hat, what should it be? That's if he had a slogan. So Trump has "Make America Great Again." I think one of the most successful pieces of campaign apparel ever. If Biden wanted to do the same thing, what would he have on his hat? I don't know. We saw Andrew Yang. When was America great? I don't know about that. I think that would be very difficult to sell. So I think maybe I don't know. Like Andrew Yang had "Make America Think Again," math. I like that, and I don't know. It's a really tough one. I want everybody to think about that. Maybe next time we could talk about that. My lovely wife asked that question, and she really knows how to. Bad and bougie, Biden. I love that. That's the one I like. Bad and bougie Biden. Not booty. All right, everyone. Please leave your email in the chat. Please send us feedback. We love to hear from you. That's what this is all about. Brian and I are already millionaires because of our teacher salaries. So we don't need to become famous. We just want to encourage discussion amongst our friends and family and community. So please leave us your email. Send us an email at donandchina@gmail.com. Other than that, we'll be back to you very soon within the next couple weeks about a new topic and to talk about some more current issues. Have a good night from me. Brian?
Thanks for joining us, guys.
All right. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, Dr. Cressy.